Token officer exposes shocking truth, real commander froze in MID mission, never told before. In the dim, flickering light of a forgotten operations room, the air crackled with a tension so thick it felt alive. Shadows danced off the peeling walls as whispers of betrayal and dread filled the corners, wrapping around the few brave souls who dared to witness the revelation. A mission was unfolding, one that would change everything, but no one could have guessed what would happen next. The buzz of the overhead lights hummed nervously, as if the very building knew of the secret about to unfold. It all started in the remote mountains, where the sky loomed dark and ominous. A commander, once revered, was frozen in fear, paralyzed right when the moment demanded action. The moment the silence of the valley was shattered by the urgent call of duty, everything turned upside down. Soldiers huddled with their weapons drawn, breaths ragged, eyes wide. It was as if time itself held its breath. They all knew something wasn't right. The forest was too quiet, the air too still. A shiver crept down their spines, panic sparking like a fuse all at once. Details emerged from the thick fog of confusion. Reports of strange sightings flickered into the chatter, unmanned drones hovering silently above, just out of reach. And those shadows, so much more than mere silhouettes, darting between the trees. The whispers grew, an undercurrent of paranoia that seeped into every soldier's mind. Was this a mission gone wrong, or something more sinister? The air felt charged with something they couldn't name, a dread that curled in their bellies, demanding attention. Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. An uneasy silence settled across the team as the commander's gaze turned glassy, staring blankly into the distance. What was going through his mind? Questions surged like a tidal wave. Was he afraid of the unknown lurking in the shadows? Or had he seen something he couldn't process? The soldiers shifted restlessly, glancing at one another, their hearts pounding in a rhythm that echoed in the stillness. Suddenly, a scream shattered the quiet, a sound so raw it cut through the air and sent tremors of fear rippling through the group. They spun around, their bodies tense and ready as they gazed into the darkening woods. What was out there? Maybe it was hatred or failure lurking in the night, eager to consume them all. The thick atmosphere was frantic with possibilities, with unanswered questions clawing at their throats. What truth had the commander stumbled upon that drove him into a frozen state of dread? And would they be able to face whatever horror lay ahead? The shadows seemed to whisper just out of reach, daring them to uncover the chilling reality that awaited them. The tension in the air felt electrifying, a static charge pulsing through every soldier standing in the chill of the wild. The scream, still echoing in their ears, sent shivers cascading down their spines. Cold sweat clung to their brows as they whispered fervent prayers, desperate for answers. Did you hear that? Mark, a young soldier, barely above a whisper, his voice quaking as he clutched his rifle tighter. His wide eyes darted into the darkness, scanning every shadow, every movement that could mean life or death. It came from over there. Sarah, a seasoned medic, pointed toward a thicket, her heart racing. A chill washed over them, a sensation deeper than the biting cold. They could feel it in their bones, the realization that something unseen was out there, something that had brought their brave commander to his knees. 3 soldiers moved silently, crouching low against the underbrush, hands steady on their weapons, instincts sharp. The air was thick, humid with the scent of pine and tension. Each rustle of leaves felt like a countdown, each step forward felt like teetering on the ledge of a dark abyss. Suddenly, another scream, this time, a harsh, breathy gasp slashed through the heavy silence, echoing back to them like a haunting melody. "Get back!" barked Joe, the team leader, sensing the fear emanating from his comrades. But fear only brewed more confusion. They needed to know what lay ahead. How had their commander, a man who had faced every horror of war, turned into a statue of terror? Bravely, they pressed forward, pushing aside branches that snapped subtly under their weight. The unseen horrors hung just beyond reach, and shadows flickered in the corners of their vision. As they neared the source of the scream, they stumbled upon a grisly scene that made their blood run cold. In the clearing lay a soldier, David, another team member, a face twisted in terror, eyes wide and glassy, locked onto something just out of their view. What had he seen? What could possibly paralyze a heart so accustomed to the perils of battle? "Get him out of here!" Sarah shouted, dropping to her knees beside David, who trembled like a leaf caught in a storm. Feeling for a pulse, she found it racing, a drumbeat of panic resonating through her fingers. The other soldiers surrounded them, hearts racing faster than they could keep pace with, yearning to uncover the truth hiding in the shadows, but then, the unmistakable whir of drones sliced through the air above them. Desperate, they looked up. The black machines glided ominously overhead, casting dark shadows on their faces. This was no ordinary mission. Whatever deployed these unmanned aircraft was watching them, waiting, and it sent icy tendrils of dread weaving through their minds. "Back to the trees. Now!" Joe commanded, his voice steady but laced with urgency. They scrambled to obey, eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of that unseen danger. Just as they huddled beneath the cover of branches, something moved in the corner of Joe's eye, a quick flash of white darting through the darkness. "Did you see that?" he thought, breath hitching in his throat. But before he could respond, the drone above emitted a loud, shrill beep, and then silence. They all held their breath, the tension spanning like a taut wire, as a sudden realization struck them: whatever was out there wasn't just waiting. They were being lured into a trap, one that promised to unveil a truth darker than they could imagine. What would they discover next, as the shadows converged and the mystery deepened? The weight of their own fear began to unravel into something far more dangerous. Was it too late to turn back? What had the commander seen, and why was the price for knowing the truth so high? The stillness was suffocating. Joe peered into the blackness, heart thumping like a war drum. The chill of the night wrapped around him, a suffocating blanket of dread. Sarah's urgent voice broke through the fog of confusion. "We can't just leave him here. What if he is still conscious?" "Sarah, listen!" Joe hissed, his eyes darting back to the drone above, which had eerily resumed its status as a silent sentinel. "We can't risk it. We need to regroup." Before he could finish, another scream pierced the air, a woman's this time. It reverberated through the trees and went silent, leaving only the echo of their fraying nerves. The four soldiers exchanged wide-eyed glances, a shared horror pulsating through them. Something was terribly wrong, and they were caught in its web. Mark crouched between them, continuing to stare where David lay. "We can't leave. What if it comes for us next?" His voice trembled as he spoke, a raw, terrified note that sent a ripple of unease through the group. That anguish was contagious. Joe felt it deep in his gut, twisting like a knife. "We need to understand what happened to him," he muttered, shifting back toward David. But as he stepped deeper into the clearing, something glimmered on the ground, an object half buried among the leaves and dirt. He bent closer, and his breath hitched. It was a small badge, a token of rank. The emblem was familiar. It's from the command unit." Joe's mind raced as he felt the icy grip of recognition. If David had that badge, then what had he been sent to do? His thoughts spiraled out of control. Just then, the drone emitted a low, ominous hum. It was slowly descending, trained on their group, the lights flashing like a spotlight highlighting their very existence. Joe's body seized with the primal instinct to run. "Get back!" he shouted, edging away from it, scrambling back toward the trees. As he moved, an overwhelming crack sounded from the thicket behind them. A massive figure emerged from the shadows, dark and hulking, with a presence that frightened even the hardiest of soldiers. The air thickened, and time appeared to drag. "Fall back! Fall back!" Joe barked again, pushing his team into an immediate scramble. They shook off their paralysis and turned, colliding with the trees. Sarah was still gripping David, trying to pull him along. He's hurt. We can't leave him. With the droning cacophony pulsating above and the shadow looming ever closer, Joe hesitated. Then he made a split-second decision. We carry him. Now. Mark and Joe moved to David's side, hoisting him up. Adrenaline surged, but the moment was quickly eclipsed by the terror closing in. The figure was closer now, an unmistakable silhouette forming against the scattered moonlight. It wasn't human. Sarah's voice broke with urgency. I can't get a pulse. What if he? Shut up and move. Joe snapped, forcing himself to shove aside the panic clawing for his throat. They darted through the trees, branches whipping against their arms and faces, breath hitching in their throats. The drone circled overhead, relentless in its pursuit, illuminating the path before them with dread certainty. Once they broke free from the thicket into a small clearing, they halted, gasping for breath and wild-eyed. But that small moment of reprieve shattered when an unnatural howl echoed through the woods, a symphony of despair that promised annihilation. Is that what David saw? Mark's voice was weak, disbelieving, his gaze fixed on the approaching darkness. Whatever is out there, it's hunting us, Joe said, his chilling words laced with urgency. They had to push further, deeper into the woods, but the truth, whatever it was now just as surely within reach. As despair began to settle like fog in their hearts, a realization sank in. What had they unleashed by fleeing into the night? And who would survive to tell their story? They pressed on, hearts pounding in tandem with every echoing step until the impossible happened. A piercing light washed over them. What the hell is that? Sarah asked, fear tightening in her chest. Joe stilled, throat dry, eyes wide. What if that's our way out? But before anyone could respond, the brightness swallowed them whole, and the shadows they thought they outran surged back. Where were they now? What awaited in the blinding glow? The bright light enveloped them, pulling them in like a whirlpool of panic and confusion. Joe squinted, struggling to adjust as the beam transformed the forest into a surreal landscape of shadows and brilliance. Their surroundings faded, and for a split second, he felt weightless, as if they were floating beyond the reach of their harsh reality. Then, just as suddenly, they landed. The thud jarred his senses, and he found himself sprawled on a cold, metallic floor. His heart raced as he glanced around. They were inside a vast, dimly lit chamber. The walls groaned with age, a stark contrast to the sterile fog around them. Joe shot up, frantically searching for his team. Sarah. Mark. Are you guys okay? I'm here. Sarah coughed from the other side of the chamber, her voice raw and shaky. Mark joined her, both of them wide-eyed and trembling. Where's David? Mark rasped, scanning the room. Joe's stomach sank. We need to find him. He stood slowly, every fiber of his being urging him to flee. It felt wrong, this place. The air was thick, heavy with an unspoken weight. But first, he needed to see if David had been transported with them. Controlled panic ebbed and flowed within him as he rushed toward the far end of the chamber, fear gnawing at his steps. Then he spotted him, sprawled awkwardly beside a console, his face pale and drawn. A wave of relief washed over Joe, but it was short-lived. David. He called, kneeling by his side. Can you hear me? David's eyes fluttered open. Joe. His voice was hoarse, as if each word took all his strength. What happened? They took us somewhere, Joe replied, examining David's injuries. His leg was deeply bruised, blood seeping through the makeshift bandage. You're safe now. We're going to find a way out of this. David's eyes widened with fear. Get out. No. You don't understand. They'll be coming. Mark finally approached, taking in their surroundings. Who's coming? What do you mean? Before David could answer, the chamber hummed ominously, flickers of light racing along the walls. Panels began to shift, revealing screens that glowed with strange symbols and data that looked like a decoded language. "What the hell is this?" Sarah whispered, her eyes darting from the screens to her friends. I think this is a command center," Joe surmised, his voice low. "They've been watching us." "What do you mean?" Mark demanded. "Who is they?" David gasped, his eyes fluttering with unfocused thoughts. "They're not just watching. They've been controlling everything." A chill swept through the air, tight and undeniable. "Everything?" Joe pressed, suddenly feeling small within the vastness of this machinery. "What does that even mean?" "They froze me during the mission," David murmured, beads of sweat forming on his brow. "I was supposed to report, but something stopped me. It's like I was trapped inside myself. The others, they didn't make it." "What did you see?" Sarah's voice broke, dread turning her stomach into knots. His gaze dropped, as if recalling a nightmare. "There was a darkness, a thing hunting us. It wasn't just here, it was everywhere." A loud crash reverberated through the chamber, cutting off the heavy silence. Joe whipped around to see the final panel shatter into pieces, revealing a twisted creature that moved with unnatural grace, its eyes gleaming with an otherworldly hunger. "Run!" Joe shouted, adrenaline overriding all logic. They bolted toward the opposite end of the chamber, pulse racing as the creature followed with terrifying speed. "What do we do?" Mark yelled, breathless as they reached a foreboding doorway at the far side. "Find a way to fight back." Joe shouted over his shoulder, each word edged with fear and adrenaline. "Stick together. It's our only chance." But just before they could enter, the ground trembled, and lights flickered once more, dimming until the room plunged into darkness. Terrified whispers filled the air. What awaited them on the other side of that door? Would they even survive long enough to find out? The darkness swallowed them whole, the thick silence amplifying their pounding hearts. Joe, cursing at the futility of the moment, felt the air grow heavier, crystallizing dread clawing at his throat. Fear morphed into a primal instinct. They needed light. They needed to see. "Sarah!" he hissed, straining to keep his voice steady, "can you find your flashlight?" "I'll try," she replied, her voice trembling as she fumbled through her pack, the sounds of her hurried movements echoing against the walls. Mark kept glancing back at the enormous creature, his breath tight as he murmured, "What the hell is that thing?" Joe swallowed hard, thoughts racing. They had to move, but where? Each second felt like minutes. He pressed his palm against the cold wall, searching for something, anything that could provide leverage, a way out. "David, can you stand?" David groaned, shifting to lean against the console. "I don't know, I can't." He closed his eyes, fighting against the pain etching deeper into his leg. Joe's heart sank as he saw the sheer terror in David's usually steadfast eyes. A small beam of light flickered to life nearby, illuminating Sarah's pale face, eyes wild with panic. "I got it." "What's the plan?" Behind them, a low growl reverberated through the chamber, sending shivers racing down Joe's spine. There was no time for indecision. "We stick together. We need to find a way to fight that thing." He turned to the console, fingers dancing over the buttons, searching desperately for answers amidst flashing lights and symbols that made no sense. As he swiped at the screen, it flickered and suddenly showcased rooms filled with cages. Cages that held grotesque forms, some eerily familiar. Joe's stomach twisted as the realization sank in. "Those are people," Mark gasped, leaning closer to the screen. "Not just people," David whispered, his eyes reflecting horror, "those are team members from missions past. They've been experimenting on us." The growling intensified, rumbles shaking the cords that supported the panels above them. Joe clenched his fists, rage boiling in his gut. "No more. We're not ending up like them." Another roar erupted, and the creature slashed through the shadows, its form barely distinguishable but filled with ravenous energy. Joe's pulse quickened. They had to buy time, they had to slow it down. "Sarah, guard the door." Mark, get something, anything we can use as a weapon. Joe barked, his voice brimming with authority. What about you? Sarah's eyes darted between them, illuminated by the weak light. I'll see what I can do with this console. I might be able to access any security features it has. Joe said, forcing back his trembling resolve. Moments dragged like hours as Mark scoured the floor, adrenaline fueling their frantic search for anything to defend themselves. Finally, he picked up a heavy piece of metal, a twisted shard that could double as a club. Got something. The creature lunged forward, drawing closer. Shadows danced as it approached, jaws snapping. Joe's heartbeat thundered in his chest like an impending storm, droplets of sweat trickling down his spine. It was now or never. Get ready. He shouted, rushing to input a command into the console, eyes fixated on the screens as the words seemed to swirl tauntingly out of reach. As the creature charged, Sarah stood her ground, metal rod gripped tightly, determination flashing in her eyes. We want to let you take us. She screamed, heart racing. The next moment unfolded in a blur. The chamber shook, a dissonant alarm blaring as Joe finally hit the right button, triggering a sequence that lit up the surroundings in an intense white glow. The creature halted, confusion flickering across its predatory features. But would it be enough to buy them the time they needed? Go! Joe yelled, feeling fear claw at the edges of his mind. While we have the chance. Together, they sprinted toward the exit, the alarms wailing like banshees as the creature reeled back, momentarily stunned. But would the door open in time? Would they escape this nightmare, or was this just the beginning of something even worse? As the lights flickered ominously, Joe's heart raced. The unknown awaited them on the other side. Would they step into freedom or horror? The door screamed ominously as Joe hurled his body against it, praying it would give way. The alarms blared around them, unleashing a cacophony that twisted his gut tighter with every second. He felt Sarah's steady presence at his side, her breath hot against the cold air. Come on. Come on. He urged, his voice barely audible over the sirens. Behind them, the creature roared, its menacing growl vibrating through the walls like thunder. Each pulse of its fury reached into Joe's chest, a reminder of the nightmare they were still in, of how close it was to devouring them whole. With a final push, the door jerked open, a shard of blinding light breaking into the dark abyss. Joe rushed through, the others a breath behind him. The blinding glare consumed them, short bursts of adrenaline coursing through their veins. They landed in a long, narrow hall, illuminated sporadically by flickering lights that seemed to struggle against the encroaching darkness. Joe's heart raced as he turned to check on the others. Stay close. Where do we go now? Sarah gasped, her voice shaking. She peered down the bleak corridor, fear etched across her face. Anywhere but here, Joe replied, urgency fueling his every word. They couldn't linger. Not now. As they sprinted down the hall, echoes of the creature's footsteps followed, heavy and persistent like a dark omen. Each footfall thumped like a countdown timer, a relentless reminder of their pursuer. Abandoning logic, they rounded a corner and stumbled upon a massive room filled with eerie, empty cages, the remains of past horrors littering the floor. What happened here? Mark whispered, his voice trembling as he stepped into the room, scanning the ominous environment. I don't want to find out, Joe replied, instinctively moving deeper into the shadowy space. The dim light revealed strange symbols inscribed on the walls, vibrating with an otherworldly energy that set the hairs on his arms on edge. He felt a chill wrap around him, a premonition lingering on his skin. Whatever they were doing here, it's wrong. As if summoned by his words, an unearthly shriek echoed through the halls. It cut through the air, sending a sharp wave of dread crashing over them. The creature had found them. Run! Joe barked as the sound intensified, almost manifesting a tangible panic. They rushed toward a door on the opposite side, but it slammed shut just as they reached it, capturing them in a trap of their own making. Come on! Push it! Mark yelled, shoving his shoulder against the metal framing. Joe and Sarah joined him, and they shoved with everything they had. But it held firm, mocking their efforts. "Is there another way out?" Sarah shouted, her voice cracking under pressure. "Over there." Joe pointed, spotting a narrow passageway partially hidden behind a stack of debris. They bolted for it as the creature's growls reverberated closer, each sound more spine-chilling than before. They squeezed through the tight space, breathless and panicked, the walls closing in on them. Joe could barely see in the dimness, but the scent of rust and decay was overwhelming and sickening. The creature's growl morphed into a roar, shaking the very ground beneath them. "Keep going," he urged. They pushed through the tight space, a desperate race against time. As they emerged into another larger chamber, the dim light revealed a sight that froze Joe in his tracks. Suspended from the ceiling were grotesque machines, their metallic arms hanging ominously. And at the center, what appeared to be a control panel hummed with a sickly glow. "What is all this?" David's voice was barely above a whisper, his eyes wide in disbelief. Joe moved closer, heart pounding against his ribs as the door they had come through slammed shut behind them with a finality that echoed through the chamber. "It looks like they were experimenting here, but what for?" The screeching of metal filled the air as the creature's shadow darkened the doorway, like a living nightmare stalking its prey. Joe's mind raced. A plan began to form, but even he could feel the weight of their imminent doom. "Get ready," he said, turning to the others, "we might need to fight or we might have to run once more." Then it happened. The creature lunged through the doorway, its eyes blazing with rage. "Now!" Joe shouted as panic surged. But before they could react, a deafening sound erupted, flooding the room, and the control panel sparked to life. Lights burst through the chamber, illuminating every dark corner in a blinding flash. "Look!" Mark shouted, pointing at the screens flickering to life. Yet what they saw paralyzed Joe. Images filled the screen's files, names, and something else, something that made his heart drop further than he thought possible. What had they stumbled into? Instinct wrestled with reason as time slowed. The revelation clawed at them, thickly palpable. "Joe, what are they hiding?" Sarah whispered, voice trembling as the creature bellowed, a deafening reminder of their impending threat. Before he could answer, a series of alarms, different from before, blared. The noise twisted into chaos as alarms flashed, and all hell seemed ready to break loose. What lay ahead was uncertain. Would they confront the truth and the creature, or would they be lost forever in the grip of something far worse? The creature lunged forward again, and as reality began to fracture, Joe made the only decision he could fight. He yelled, desperation igniting his words like fire in dry brush. In the blink of an eye, everything spiraled into a whirlpool of action and chaos, and as the creature charged, Joe braced himself for impact, wondering if there was a way to emerge unscathed from this madness. In that darkest instant, under the unforgiving lights of the room, Joe realized something horrifying. They were not just fighting for their lives, they were fighting for a truth that might change everything they ever believed. And just like that, the door to hope began to close behind them. Would they uncover the conspiracy, or would the creature consume not just their lives but their very essence of what they thought they knew? The creature barreled toward them, jaws wide, the sounds of its vicious growl merging with the frantic blare of alarms. Joe's heart thundered as adrenaline surged through him, urging him to act. "We need that control panel," he shouted over the chaos, determination flooding his voice. Mark lunged for the nearest shelf, grabbing a jagged piece of metal. "I'll hold it off," he yelled, positioning himself for a confrontation. His face was grim, steely resolve etching his features. "No. It'll tear you apart." Joe shot back, terror gripping him. But Mark stood firm, eyes blazing. Just as Joe opened his mouth to protest further, the creature lunged at Mark with horrifying speed. Joe's instincts kicked and he sprinted forward, adrenaline morphing his fear into action. "Get down!" he yelled, pushing Mark aside as the creature snapped its massive jaws where Mark had been. The beast collided with the control panel, splintering machinery under its colossal weight. Screaming metal filled the air and sparks flew wildly, dancing with the shadows. But amidst the chaos, something extraordinary happened. The screens flickered again, images reforming like a jigsaw puzzle coming together. "Wait! Look!" Sarah shouted, pointing at the chaotic stream of visuals, photos of what seemed to be human experiments, faces on screens, names scrawled across documents, each more chilling than the last. Tears filled her eyes, emotions colliding as horror painted her expression. What did they do to them? "No time!" Joe yelled, gathering his wits. The creature was recovering, fury reflected in its wild eyes. "We have to figure out how to use it. We might be able to fight back." "Fight back? Against that?" David objected, voice trembling. "We can barely survive as it is. Trust me." Joe replied, his fingers instinctively dancing over the buttons on the control panel. This was their setup. There has to be something here we can use. Marked by desperation, the control panel hummed with energy, the lights flickering wildly as they desperately tried to make sense of it. "Sarah, find anything that looks like a weapon," Joe ordered, keeping one eye on the advancing creature, the other's nerve producing a sharp sense of urgency. She darted to the side where remnants of machinery lay strewn about, eyes frantic. The noises of the rogue creature grew louder, its growls raw and fierce, vibrating through the room. Joe pressed a flashing button, lights surged, and a strange whirring noise echoed through the chamber. He squinted at the evolving information on the screens. What is this? A containment field? He wondered, but then the screens showed a flashing alert, system malfunction. Oh crap, he mumbled, panic clawing at his throat. What did I do? This was a bad idea. David exclaimed, backing away. We're out of time. As if summoned by Joe's chaotic choices, the ground began to tremble, a low, ominous rumble that shook him to his bones. At that moment, the creature lunged again, jaws snapping just inches from Joe's face. He reeled back, breathless, instinct pushing him to leap aside. Now or never. Joe spat, grinding his teeth. The room erupted with terrifying energy. The creature roared, bathed in flashes of blinding light as the control panel fully awakened. An enormous electric arc zapped toward the creature, jolting it back, its monstrous screeches echoing in the air, mingling with the chaotic alarms. Did it work? Mark panted, disbelief spreading across his face as he cautiously stepped closer. Joe, stunned, could hardly process it. Sweat dripped down his back as the lights pulsed, each flash revealing horrifying images of the past experiments, faces of those who had come before. They were trying to control it, Joe murmured, realization dawning. What do you mean? Sarah asked, her voice a trembling whisper. Look. Joe pointed, excitement battling fear. We can use this device against it. It's a weapon. They were weaponizing the creature. But before he could finish his thought, the creature, recovering faster than Joe anticipated, surged forward, fury radiating from its every movement. Get behind me! Joe shouted, adrenaline roaring through his veins. Mark, find something to block that passage. We can't let it corner us. The chamber trembled around them as chaos erupted. Every second felt like a lifetime, the weight of their choices hanging thick in the air. The screens flickering behind him started to overload, signals fading into garbled code. Was their last hope unraveling at the seams? Last chance, everyone! Joe shouted, grounding himself. But would they be able to harness the knowledge they stumbled upon, or would the truth become a weapon against them? Just then, the lights began to dim, a warning echoing in their ears. Was it too late to regain control? As the darkness closed in, the creature's eyes glowed with hungry rage, ready for its next strike. What lay ahead in the grip of this twisted fate? In the depths of despair, where would the path of truth lead them, or would it all collapse into disaster? The creature's roar sent out shockwaves that rattled the very foundations of the chamber. Joe's heart raced as the darkness closed in, fueled by pure terror. We can't let it trap us. He shouted, scanning the console for anything that could help. Sweat beaded down his forehead as he fought to think clearly. Mark had grabbed a piece of debris, a steel pipe, and stood stalwart between Joe and the creature, his stance fierce. "I'm not dying today," he yelled, clenching his jaw. The words felt like a thin shield against the grim reality looming before them. The furious growls of the beast became a deafening echo in Joe's mind, drowning out everything else. "Mark, get back. It's coming for you," he yelled, reaching for the control panel desperately. He jabbed at buttons, hoping for a miracle, each press echoing like the countdown to calamity. The flickering lights of the control panel painted their faces with sickly hues, revealing the deep-set fear in their eyes. His fingers slipped, and he struck a larger green button. With an earth-shattering roar, the creature lunged, colliding with Mark, who barely dodged the blow. Joe's heart dropped as he saw his friend stumble backward, his feet caught on a piece of twisted metal. "Mark!" Joe screamed, propelled by visceral panic. Shadows danced around them as the creature turned, its eyes fixed on Mark, who struggled to regain his footing. In that moment, regret seeped into Joe's veins faster than the realization that they might not make it through. "Get to the control panel," Mark shouted, dragging himself up. "Just do it." Joe's heart raced, the urgency intensifying as he pivoted, fingers flying over switches and knobs. The lights pulsed erratically as the panel hummed with increasing energy, screens displaying data that flickered and faded, but with every flicker, the creature's rage grew. It slammed its massive bulk against a nearby wall, creating a deafening crash that shook dust and debris free. The alarms blared louder still, drowning Joe's thoughts in a shrill warning. "Something is happening," Sarah cried, her voice wavering but laced with urgency. "We're accessing something." As the console blinked with activity, images erupted on the screens, a montage of madness from the past, each frame cascading into the next. Workers, their faces twisted in fear, huddled together, and documents detailing horrific experiments flashed like lightning through a storm. "Dear God," Sarah gasped, shivers racing down her spine as the grim reality sunk in deeper. They used people. I need a weapon. Anything." Joe yelled, desperation lacing his words. "Sarah, see if the files tell us how to control this thing." With her eyes wide and soaked in fear, she searched the screens, fingers trembling over keys. "I can't process this." Tears streamed down her cheeks, the horror of their situation bearing down on her. The creature turned on them once more, snaking forward, eyes blazing like molten lava. With sheer determination, Mark stepped in front of Joe and Sarah, clenching the pipe. "I'll hold it. You have to get it under control." "No," Joe shouted, his voice raw. "You need to help me." "Just do it, Joe." Mark insisted, his voice tremulous but resolute. The room buzzed with tension. They were moments away from either salvation or annihilation. With everything they had, they fought against this grotesque nightmare. Each moment felt surreal, like a waking nightmare where escape was only a flickering screen away. Suddenly, Joe struck another button. Lights blazed, illuminating the darkness. A low hum vibrated through the air, and with it, a whirlwind of energy gathered, forming a barrier that flickered ominously before them. "Is it working?" Mark called, hope threading through his grim features. "Can you trap it?" "Maybe. But it's risky." Joe yelled back, heart pounding as the creature paused, its malevolent gaze fixed on the glowing barrier. With a deep breath, Joe pressed down hard on the control panel, fury fueling his resolve. The room shook as the beast lunged, but the energy field erupted to life, sparking and crackling with the discharged power of years of containment. That as the creature collided with the barrier, it howled in fury, the noise ringing in their ears like a death knell. "Hold it, Joe!" Mark shouted, fear and strength threading through his voice. "Faster! Just a little longer." "Sarah, what do you see?" Joe's eyes were locked on the howling creature, wild and feral. Time stood still, the air thickening with dread as they struggled to control the chaos spiraling out of their grasp. But as the creature battered against the barrier, cracks began to form, each fracture sending tremors throughout the chamber. "Joe!" Sarah cried out, pointing at the screens. "There's a code we might be able to use. We'll find a way," he yelled back, as the barrier flickered. But just as another surge of energy enveloped them, the ground trembled violently, and the lights exploded into darkness. What had they unleashed? And in the depths of that darkness, was there any hope left? Joe spun around, disoriented in the pitch blackness. His heart thundered in his chest, a drumbeat of primal fear. Was it just him, or had the walls of the chamber actually closed in? Everything felt surreal, vibrating with danger, and he realized he couldn't even see his own hands in front of his face. "Mark? Sarah?" His voice trembled, swallowed by the darkness. The only reply was the frantic whisper of his own breath echoing back at him. A shuffling noise then broke the silence. Raw instinct kicked in, sending him plummeting into the shadows, crouching low. "Stay close," he hissed, praying they could hear him. He fumbled through the darkness, hands brushing against cold metal and jagged debris. Then he heard an inhuman growl, low and rumbling, a reminder that their menacing foe wasn't gone. Fear streaked through him as he pressed his back to a wall, trying to glean any remnants of light. "Joe!" Sarah's voice pierced through the enveloping gloom. "Over here." Relief surged through him, and he followed the sound like a lifeline. When he found her, he could barely make out her silhouette, trembling and wide-eyed. "What happened to the lights?" "I don't know. The power must be surged or something." Joe drew a deep breath, steadying his racing heart. "We need to figure out another way to get control." Mark's figure appeared, emerging from the shadows with a determined look. "Did you check the emergency lights?" The remnants of the riotous energy still pulsed beneath their feet. The air smelled burnt, tinged with ozone and fear. They might still work. Quickly, they searched the room, feeling along the walls, hoping for something, anything, that could illuminate their dark prison. The creature's growl echoed, and it sent each of them into a state of panic, but a faint glimmer suddenly broke through the darkness. "Over here!" Sarah shouted, pointing to a red switch blinking dimly against a wall. "Hold off the beast!" Mark yelled, grabbing Joe's pipe and stepping away from the group. "I'll keep it distracted. You get that light on." "Mark, no." Joe's protest was drowned by the roar of the creature surging forward, and Mark's desperate stance. In that harrowing moment, something shifted within Joe. Determination coiled tightly in his chest. "Let us go," he urged Sarah, racing toward the switch. With trembling hands, he flicked the switch upward. Light sputtered to life, illuminating the agonizing scene before them. The creature had barreled into Mark, sending the rebel flying into a heap of jagged metal. "Mark!" Joe screamed, feeling the world tilt beneath him. Adrenaline surged as he spotted his friend writhing on the ground, blood smearing across the steel debris. "Go! Help him!" Sarah shouted, eyes wide and terrified, but Joe felt heavy, rooted to the spot. The fear was suffocating. "No! I can't leave him." He could barely breathe through the dread, but the ferocity of their situation pulled him forward. He dashed toward Mark, heart pounding hard enough to burst. The creature snarled, turning its attention from Mark to Joe, eyes glinting with malice. With every ounce of bravery he could muster, Joe hurled the steel pipe at the creature's head. It struck hard, causing the beast to stagger back briefly. "Joe!" Mark rasped, struggling to get up. "Concentrate on the panel. We have to finish this." In that instant, Joe pressed against the control panel again. Red lights flashed, information darting across the screens as he wrestled with the controls. "I can't keep this up." The creature lunged toward him, but as it closed in, he struck more buttons, feeling the energy gather. The chamber thudded around them as the glow intensified, bursting with electricity. "What are you doing?" Sarah gasped, her voice trembling. "They said control is the key. I just have to find it." Joe's heart raced with desperation, fingers flying over the buttons. But then the lights flickered maddeningly and began to fade, and the cracks in the barrier widened ominously. "I can see it," Joe hollered, panic shifting through him. "But I don't know which one. Keep trying." Mark yelled weakly, blood dripping down his forehead. But it was too late. The creature's ear-piercing roar echoed, and reality twisted into chaos. The barrier crumbled, releasing a torrent of darkness, now without retreat. As despair settled around them like a cloak, Joe felt a surge of anger and courage. "We will fight," he spat, and in that moment, a flicker of hope ignited, a chance to reverse the nightmare waiting to consume them. Yet in the shadows behind the creature, a new sound emerged, a whisper, soft as velvet but laden with malice. "Welcome back," it seemed to say. What terrible truth lay waiting for them in the darkness? The creature roared, the sound rippling through the chamber like thunder. Joe's heart pounded, adrenaline flooding his veins as he honed in on the pulsing control panel. "We can't give up," he shouted, battling against the creeping despair. "You have to focus." Mark gasped, trying to crawl closer. The blood staining his shirt glimmered under the flickering lights, making Joe's gut twist. "Just find a way to keep it back." "Right," Joe yelled, adrenaline propelling him as he jabbed at the controls. The screens glowed erratically, flickering with fragments of data, but one unmistakable command caught his eye: engaging containment protocol. "Sarah," he called, his voice urgent. "Get ready to back me up." With a nod, she grasped the makeshift weapon tightly, her resolve bolstering his. "Let us do this." Joe felt an electric charge skitter through him as he activated the containment system. The ensuing hum vibrated through the air, building to a crescendo, and a series of shimmering barriers materialized, encircling the creature. But time was short. The beast thrashed against the barrier, fury radiating from its eyes. "We can't hold it forever," Mark shouted, gasping as he pulled himself off the ground. "Quick! What's next?" Joe's heart raced as he scanned the screens again, desperate words screamed for his attention. "Weapon protocols activated. We have to turn its own strength against it." "What?" Mark shouted, wrestling with the pain. Joe didn't hesitate. He pressed a series of buttons, triggering a series of ominous clicks like the countdown clock of their fate. A beam of energy shot forward, striking the creature with a blinding flash. The impact staggered it back, eliciting a horrific growl that reverberated through the chamber. The crackle of the energy surged around them, pulsing with raw strength as the creature writhed, its limbs flailing like a wild beast in a death dance. Joe's heart quickened at the sight of it, yet fear gripped him like iron nails, urging him to press on. "Sarah, help me strategize. What do we target?" Her eyes shone with resolve. "The control panel. Override those systems to amplify the energy, take it to maximum." "Right," he exclaimed, diving back to the control panel, fingers a blur over the keys. The data flashed even faster now, their lives dependent on his next moves. The creature's snarls grew desperate as it fought against the energy, the barrier shimmering and straining to hold. "Give me the nearest coordinate," Joe shouted, undeterred by the alarm flashing a warning buzz in response. "Bottom left there." Sarah pointed frantically as Mark staggered forward, renewed determination fighting through his pain. "On it," Joe confirmed, hitting the button that locked in the targeting. With one decisive command, Joe strengthened the energy field, the raw power constricting around the creature like a vice. Desperation surged through him. It was now or never. "Everyone ready?" "Always," Mark growled, defiance igniting in his eyes. "Let us end this." Joe slammed his hand down and watched the surrounding energy ignite in a blinding blaze. The creature shrieked, a tortured sound that echoed the agony of their own struggles. The beams of energy danced like wild flames, illuminating the chamber, revealing shadows of twisted forms that haunted the periphery. They had to act. "Push it," Sarah shouted, her voice slicing through the chaos. One final surge erupted, the energy pooled into a single concentrated force, resonating with an intensity that shook the very floor beneath their feet. The screen spiraled into a flurry of numerical chaos, and then it happened, the creature was engulfed. Its roar morphed into a startled gasp, the shadows receding as the energy cocooned it, banishing its malice with a deafening clap. As silence fell like a heavy blanket, they held their breath. Had they done it? I can't believe we, Mark trailed off, disbelief coloring his words. Joe's heart raced, hope flooding through him like a summer rain. It's going down. But before they could rejoice, the chamber trembled with a rumble that felt as though the ground itself was groaning in pain. What now? Sarah shouted, panic creeping back into her voice. Secure your gear. Joe barked. We need to find a way out before the whole thing collapses. They regrouped and stumbled toward an exit illuminated by a soft, pulsating glow, breathing heavily, adrenaline still coursing through their veins. After everything, after seeing David and whatever was happening here, Sarah murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. We need to come back, Joe said, determination setting in. We need to expose what they were doing. This can't go unpunished. The urgency thickened the air as they moved through the corridor. Hearts pounded, still resonating from their battle, but this time with hope. Outside, the night air welcomed them, crisp and refreshing, and it felt like a promise. They staggered toward the horizon, hearts echoing with the beats of their victory. Together, we survived, Mark said, an exhausted smile creeping onto his face. As they crossed the threshold of the forest, the dark woods shifted behind them, a heavy silence enveloping the night. Joe turned back, catching one last glimpse of the foreboding chamber, thoughts still swirling. They could still hear the echoes of survival, of camaraderie, and haunted truths, but now their journey was only just beginning. Let us make a vow, Joe proposed, no more hiding. We share our story, for David, for those who came before us. We owe it to them. Agreed, Sarah replied, a fierce light igniting in her eyes. Together they stood, silhouetted against the rising dawn, ready to face what lay ahead. They had confronted the darkness, and together they would uncover the truth. Now was their moment to step into the light. The weight of both past and future rested on their shoulders, but they could carry it together, and with that, they walked toward the first rays of hope, ready to unravel the dark tapestry that had ensnared so many, prepared to ignite a truth buried in shadows. You need to subscribe now. You don't want to miss the next exclusive stories coming your way. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and support our journey together. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this intense conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this stunning conclusion. Your voice matters, and together we create the magic.